Hey, everybody. It's Ellen and Ron from the Bitch Slap of Truth. And today we're going to have a little chat between friends about a relatively new documentary that came out called Breath of Fire, which is about the Kundalini yoga community crisis, possible cult activities alert, and probable cult activities alert. And a young lady, whose original name is Katie Griggs. In the community, she was called Guru Jagat, and that's what this documentary, Breath of Fire, is about. So, Ron, did you check it out?
I did, and it's so funny when you told me about it. I was like, "Oh, this is so my jam." Because I don't know if you know this about me, Ellen. Uh, I am obsessed with this yoga. I do this for years now. I've been doing this yoga practice called DDPY, which is Dallas Diamond Page Yoga. It's
Oh, no, I
former,
didn't know that.
yeah, like former WCW wrestler Dallas Diamond Page became a yoga guru. Like this is a true story.
Oh my gosh. Like, totally new subject to explore. But anyway,
I
that's
know.
amazing. I
And
had no idea.
there's a documentary about him as well, but he's been doing
Oh,
this
we
for
getting
like
into that. We gonna get that for sure.
but so when you told me there's a documentary about like Kundalini yoga and all the kind of scary backstage workings of
Yeah.
these people
Yeah.
and how they led and how followers flocked to them and at the core the danger and how they mistreated. We're going to talk about all of that, but it really spoke to me. And you used this right before I started watching. I kept thinking about how you said when we first talked, you said, I'm obsessed with this. So, like, here's my big first question for you is like, you were obsessed with a show with a documentary, right? About these people flocking to a leader. Walk me through that. Why were you obsessed? Like, what inside of you was like, oh, because it's so bingeable, this thing. I couldn't stop watching it. But what made you
Oh
obsessed?
yeah, it's muy bingeable. I think Ron, I'm obsessed with cult stuff in general. I will watch cult stuff like you will pry my cold dead eyeballs away from stories about cults. And I think I'm probably not the only one because that's why we're seeing so many documentaries and series on Netflix, HBO. I mean, I could name 10 within the last year or so. And especially, we're seeing a bunch of documentaries and YouTube series about cults that I would call on the more sort of spiritual side of things, or metaphysical side of things, which is very interesting to me. But why am I obsessed with cults? And why is anyone obsessed with cults? Why are cults so popular, right? Both people joining them and then other weird people like me watching them. I think what personally fascinates me is what I think of as the prison of belief. And I'm obsessed with that on like a global level. The prison of belief obsesses me. And I think we all live inside different versions of the prison of belief. And what I mean about that is we all have beliefs based on our own experience, which we use to navigate the world, and that I think we use unconsciously to recreate our own worlds over and over and over again, right? So that's some metaphysical law of attraction shit. So I won't go too deep down that. But I think when we look at stories like this, what happens is that's really cool is on the one hand, it's this totally bingeable soap opera. So it's so much fun to watch, like just from a like whole what? And on the other hand, I think it's fascinating because for each of us watching, I think it makes us ask questions about who we're following, why we're following them. Um, when you look at YouTube channels that discuss cults, you see in the comments just this war between people sort of trying to decide who was most at fault, right? Who's to blame for this? How do we understand this story? So I'm a story junkie in general, and I will watch any, like, back in the day when there was only 3 channels on television, like, would I get involved? Like, you could set me down in front of any stupid soap opera for 3 days in a row, and by day 3, I'd be like, oh my God, what's going to happen to Kristen? Right. So, like, there's that element for sure. For sure. But I think it's fascinating to me because I could 100% see myself getting involved in something like this.
Well,
Totally.
this is what I'm glad you said that, because two things. That we talk with the best of intentions. Like, I know as a performance coach, I want to direct my clients to find that light within them that shines as bright as any of these leaders who have manipulated, we find out in the documentary, done horrible atrocities to their followers, right? And this was shocking, because I'm working to, I always, if I have clients that I feel like have star quality, I'm like, you have star quality. People are gonna just gravitate and engage with you, and they're gonna buy everything you're selling, right? And these people, all these documentaries, they're examples of people who've taken that to a horrible extreme, where right. And so, but that being said, I love that you talked about prison of belief, because on one hand, people are flocking to these leaders because they want to change something about themselves, right?
Right. Yep.
And yet, so conceivably they're imprisoned before, because they're imprisoned in the way they are right now, that they in the state that they're in right now, they want to change. So then they find a leader, a guru, a cult leader, to move them away from that, to put them into something else. But that's a prison of belief anyway. Then they're literally imprisoned, and like their kids are imprisoned. They have to fly off to India and like be abused, as in the case in this documentary. So like, why do you think people are innately so quick to want to change and so quick to give their power away to someone else? Which is what we say in this documentary.
Yeah. And again, I think when I say prison of belief that we all maybe sometimes are in, I just mean that we all have experiences where we're sort of repeating the same old thing, and we're sort of trying to get out of it different ways, right? We run across somebody extremely charismatic, a leader. This could be from a religion. It could be just from like a self-help organization, like in Nixium and Keith Raniere, right? It could be from a yoga leader like Yogi Bhajan and Kundalini Yoga, which is what this documentary is about. It could be from any type of what they're now calling high control groups, which I think is a much nicer word than cult. Stephen Hassan, who's as far as I know, the world's primary cult expert, he always points out, like, nobody joins a cult, right? Like, just doesn't happen. People find communities of belonging where they feel like a better version of themselves, right? And they feel, I think belonging is huge, 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 huge. So I think what we see is, when we experience a part of our lives where we are a bit dissatisfied, lost, maybe there's a breakup, maybe there's a loss, maybe it's just like you see all the time, where it's a younger person who just got out of high school and college, and they're kind of looking for that next thing. Like, it doesn't mean that necessarily some terrible trauma has afflicted them. It could just be, what's next. I think we've come so far in the last 5 years, as far as like, because of all these documentaries to some degree. Like, I feel like 5 years ago, people would say, oh, I would never join a cult. Like, I'm too practical. I'm too, objective, analytical. And like, after watching a lot of this stuff, I would say bullshit. I'd call bullshit on that. I think the desire to belong is so profound for people. And go ahead.
The desire to belong, but also the desire, and I pride on being. I'm not a team player. I'm my own solo show. Like, I'm a headliner. I'm not a ensemble member. Right. Like, all these stories in my head, and yet I was going through a rough time. I get on a call with you this summer, and you were like, do this, do that. You weren't like rude about it. You were like, you were trying to help me, and you were like, do this, and I felt so much better. I did everything you said. I read the book you told me to read. I like really took your advice. And in my head, I caught myself going, Ellen's going to help me. I put all this faith and trust, which I should, which I stand by. I think you're very talented and brilliant. But in my head, it was easy for me to go what Ellen said. Like I was almost like, here, Ellen, make me famous.
Right.
Here, make me rich, make me. And it's like that. You never said you were going to do that. But like in my head, I go, if I just listen to Ellen, I'm going to get out of this funk. And so that the seriousness of the state that I was in in that moment feeling hopeless or scared, and then I'm like this person who speaks with so much charm and charisma and yet has a system and has solutions and says, we need a bitch slap the truth. We need and I'm like, I do need that. And that will help me stick out. Right. So like I go, it's very easy to your point. It's very easy to follow someone and go, yeah, like teach me how to do better, like make my life better. Right.
You're right. You're right that it's that journey from sort of like this lostness or uncertainty, or like when we've sort of really tried really hard to change something and it doesn't change. And then someone pops out of the blue, me in this case, who says, hey, just do this, focus on this. It feels so good to go from like a feeling of lostness, uncertainty, that terrible feeling when you're trying so hard and it feels like it's only getting worse. And then so it's this journey, this emotional journey from uncertainty to certainty, right? And someone outside of you is like, hey, this is a good thing, do this. And yet, isn't that the human condition in the sense that we've always had people who are leaders for whatever reason, right? Who have discovered a system or a way of being that maybe they learned from somebody else that tends to be effective. And then we got other people who are going to do all that, and there's going to be a grift behind it. Every single time there's going to be a grift.
And that's what we see in this documentary, right? Our main character, Guru Jagat.
Yeah, Guru Jagat. Yeah.
She's my age. She's in her 40s. But I mean, she wasn't when she starts, right? Walk me through the journey of how we follow her, and then the discoveries we learn about Kundalini yoga. Like, walk me through that whole journey that she goes on, and what we as the audience go on.
Yeah. So the core kind of character here in this story is this person named Katie Griggs. And in her, I believe, 20s, maybe early 30s, she's in Los Angeles. She hooks up with this Kundalini yoga community that at the time, I think this is like early 2010s, is really active in LA. And it's like all the cool Hollywood yoga people are in this community. There's celebrities going to this community.
Madonna,
and a bunch of other people like Orlando Bloom, bunch of other people. So this is like kind of the cool, hip place to be. So she joins this community and apparently feels really good doing this Kundalini yoga, which, by the way, like the reason it's called breath of fire is like breath of fire is a particular like breathing technique that you do in Kundalini yoga. Well, the problem is this whole Kundalini yoga thing. She apparently is not only, I don't know that she's particularly good at the yoga itself. We don't see many videos of her doing the yoga. Like we see a couple like short, like sort of, I think that from a long time ago. Mostly what we see is her up on stage with a microphone in kind of large flowing dresses with a turban, and she's white, wearing a Sikh, I think is how you pronounce it, turban. And we hear her, sharing the good news of Kundalini yoga. That's what we see. The problem is the people that she's getting this ancient yoga practice from are deeply problematic. And what I got from researching this a bit was that there isn't really a Kundalini yoga outside of this dude, Yogi Bhajan, who, as far as I can tell, invented it, brought it to America in the 60s, late 60s, during that sort of Beatles wave when everyone was getting a guru. We can blame the Beatles for this. I think it's definitely their fault. So he comes. So this whole group of young people in California are attracted to this, and then Yogi Bhajan delivers Kundalini yoga. Then another dude gets involved, and basically by the time Katie Griggs inherits this, she's like the third generation leader of this group, and she becomes this sort of millennial figure of yogic bliss. I think would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, which is by design, right? So like what's fascinating about it too is that spoilers. We do spoilers? Is that okay? Like
we're going to have to do spoilers because you can't talk about this story. I don't know if you can. I think we could probably talk about it without saying what happens in the end.
There you go. Okay,
that makes sense.
So
yeah, because I watch this documentary. It's interesting. Yeah,
something that's fascinating to this point is that Guru Bhajan, who brings it to
Yogi. We'll just say Yogi.
Yogi Bhajan.
Usually, yeah.
Yogi Bhajan. What's fascinating is he's like a what's called like a customs guy in India. He's not a spiritual yogi master. He's a guy that like he has a job and he comes to the United States with $35 in his pocket, and he becomes this multimillionaire with Rolls Royces and mansions. And then the more we're learning about him, I mean, he evolves into this cult leader, and I don't think he set out to be one. He just came to pursue the American dream. But then the more power he gets and the more he's seeing, people are really needing this. So I'm going to make up. And he does like this hybrid of like the spiritual side and the Sikh religion. He brings a lot of that into it, while at the same token, the stuff that his own proclivities, like his own desires, he talks about how money's good and how your kids, eventually he takes the kids away from the parents, like a true cult leader. And he goes, your kids don't want to be with you. They're having so much fun without you. You know, your kids don't care about you. Your kids don't like all this stuff. Let them be kids, all this stuff. He knows
this American overprotectiveness. You're ruining your children. Yeah.
And he takes the first generation, the people that flock to him, and they create this commune and ashram all over the countries.
Oh, yeah.
He takes their kids and puts them in India by themselves. These are 6-7-year-olds, like into 13, and horrible story. They get sick. And the parents are so disassociated. The parents don't do anything. They don't that was the heart-wrenching part for me. I couldn't.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
I couldn't watch that. But so I just want to put that out there. But you see how someone, when given absolute power, becomes an absolute piece of shit. Like it was just
very quickly.
Very quickly.
I think it's interesting. A lot of people say, oh, money or power makes people, inevitably act badly. I think money or power reveals who people really are, period. And can it have a corrupting influence? Absolutely. But for sure. But I think it's more interesting to regard it as money and power will inevitably reveal who you really are, bottom line. Because there are people who get money and power who don't act like that. And this person, I don't know that they even determined that he was actually like a follower, like a devout follower of the Sikh religion.
Yeah.
Back where he was, I think, isn't he from Pakistan? I think
he's from Pakistan. He's not even Indian. Yeah. I mean,
yeah. And so basically there's a modern Sikh on the documentary woman who's like, listen, we don't claim him, like this guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, so he takes all these sort of Eastern ideas of the Sikh religion and yoga and the turban and the white clothes and the chakras, and he brings them and he packages them for this California, LA. And this is, again, first generation of people. This is like late 60s, early 70s. So all these people get super into Yogi Bhajan. Kundalini yoga starts evolving. He gets them more and more involved. They start giving him more and more of their labor, right? Because most of these are young people, don't have a bunch of money. So they give him more and more labor. They give him more and more entrepreneurial ideas. By the way, eventually all these brands emerge out of this, like kettle
Yogi
tea, right? Which I have both those things in my closet right now. So Then these young people who are involved in this group in the 60s and 70s, they are with Yogi Bhajan, they're doing Kundalini yoga, they're breathing with the fire, they feel amazing, and then they have children, and then he's like, oh, you don't want, this gross American overprotectiveness. Like, your children need to be free spirits. So then he ships them off for undisclosed reasons to these other places in India that are, like something out of Charles Dickens. Like they're there with their little gruel bowls, like, please, can I have some more? Like not getting enough food, all this kind of stuff. And the first generation parents back in the States are like, yeah, it's going, I got a postcard. They said they're doing good. They said they made a friend. It's just like, what is happening? So that's going on. Then another dude rises up through the ranks in this system, and that is Hari Jiwan, whose real name, and sorry, I have not investigated, I didn't get all my names down, but his name is Michael something. Anyway, he's also not a Pakistani guy. He's an American guy. He's from New York. Ron, you'd say he's Jewish.
I just felt like I was like, I think his name was like Michael Hirsch or something. I forget what it was. But
I thought so too, but I wasn't sure. Anyway, so he's got a beard, he's got the turban, and he's got like, I think, brown eyes. So like, if you don't look at him too closely and you just see the beard and turban, that's another interesting thing. It's like, oh, this is another Yogi Bhajan guy. So Hari Jiwan actually winds up, before he becomes the new dude, he's in the group. He goes to prison for several years for fraud. He comes out, he has nothing. And for some reason, Yogi Bhajan is like, okay, you can be in charge of this one center in the yogic community. So I think that's when he actually takes on the name Hari Jiwan. So the people,
I think I got the sense, I could be making this up, that because he took one, he fell on the sword, like he took one for the team, like
I think he did,
because the FBI was surveilling the
that's
cult.
right.
Yeah,
right.
so
that's right.
They were like, here, we got you, like a mafia boss, like we'll give you Oklahoma.
Right. So yeah, here you go. Enjoy. So then he's really the one, I think, who sort of picks out this woman named Katie Griggs, this young woman we talked about, who originally, she's American. Her mother was also a bit of a hippie. Her parents had her. They lived in a tiny log cabin. And her mother, who is in the documentary now as an older person, reports that Katie's father left, and when Katie was really little, I mean, I think this is like a year and a half old, maybe, and that Katie used to look out the window of this log cabin for her father. I think this is a really important element to the story because there's, I believe, a reason that Katie is so influenced by Hari Jiwan, who's this guy we've just been talking about. So we've got sort of fraudster, grifter number one. That's Yogi Bhajan. Then we've got fraudster, grifter number two. That's Hari Jiwan. And then we're about to start the story of potential. Go ahead.
And so in addition to being a grifter, Hari Jiwan, he has an eye for marketing, because he goes, the face of our next generation, of the third generation, needs to be a woman. Like, he knows the audience. He's like, it's, I think this is 2004, 2005, 2006.
Yep.
This is the mid 2000s now. And he's like, the face isn't going to be this guy. It's going to be a woman. So they groom her. They're literally grooming her to take over in a way. And she is charming.
Yeah. And we don't know exactly how that happened, but you can see her, like, I think he absolutely did know, like, this is the right face and voice for this. You've got this woman who's attractive. She's charming. She's sort of, she unexpectedly uses swear words, even in the middle of yogic things. She's just got that sort of self-deprecating charm. Again, it's really weird. In the documentary, in the beginning, one of her close friends that she grew up with, who's like Katie Griggs' best friend, shares a couple of photos of like when Katie first joined Kundalini yoga, and we see her actually doing the yoga. After that, however, we don't see her really doing yoga beyond, I guess, leading this particular exercise, like breath of fire, where you breathe in a particular way very, very rapidly. And it has a huge effect on your biochemical state, basically.
And she calls herself out on it too. She calls herself on her lack of physical abilities or fitness. There you go, physical fitness. Yeah, she calls it. She's like, if you're like me and you don't do any, like she calls it out. But you're right. She is a master at getting people in the state where they're so they breathed in so much that their whole brain is like, oh, they feel out of it, and then they upsell.
Yeah, I mean, and so both all three generations that we know of people who are in this documentary who were part of Kundalini. So we're talking about the first generation that were there back in the 60s, 70s, the second generation that, kind of came in during the 90s, and the third generation. And again, I'm being loose with the numbers, but you understand what I'm saying. This younger group that came in like, say, the 2010s, early 2000s. All three generations report that it's well known that after you've done a Kundalini yoga session, that your brain is just like elsewhere. And many of the people who are interviewed for the documentary spoke about how, they came, they did this Kundalini, they did the first Kundalini session, and instantly they felt different. They felt a different chemistry. They felt different in their body, which, if you hyperventilate a certain way for a couple hours, I imagine would probably happen. Again, I don't know. I haven't done it. And then when you're in that condition where you're just like, oh my God, so good, right? That's when you come up and you get the upsell, right? To do the next course and that is so familiar to me as a person who has done, not yoga stuff, but I've definitely done self-help stuff where I've come out and I'm just like in this euphoric, blissful state. And like, now it's time for the upsell. Like I have 100% been part of a group that does two groups that I can think of.
Oh, I have to share this 100%. This happened to me, happened for me. I know a lot of people that love.
Good reframe, Ron. Yeah, well done.
And I'm going to say the name here. There's a group, Landmark. Like people love Landmark, swear by it. That's awesome. Power to you. I've heard incredible things. I have really good friends that have gone through the program, loved it. I had a really horrible experience with it where a friend of mine, this is like 20 something years ago, she's like, hey, will you come to my graduation? And I knew she was a massage therapist. And I was like, oh, I wonder if she got like a certification. I'm like, am I going to get a free massage?
Right. This sounds good.
This sounds good. And it's downtown Chicago.
My gosh. Yeah.
I come in and I'm like, cool, this is really exciting. Like and then I'm realizing it's not a massage thing. And right when I'm like checking in, they're like, oh yeah, we have your name here. They're like, they're selling me right at like before I even know anything. They're like, can we get your name? Can we get your email? Can we get all your stuff? I'm like, no, I'm here for my friend. Like it. Right. And then so we see some presentations, and then literally at the end of these presentations of people being like, I changed my life. I was so happy. I was on drugs, and then I did this program, and now everything's great. Everything's great. And then they're like, and now, turn to your friend and ask them if they want to be a part of it. So then there's people running around the room with like trying to get people to sign up. And I was like, no, I'm good. Thank you. And literally the minute I said, no, I'm good. Thank you to her, 3 guys out of nowhere flocked to me. And she looks at me and she goes, come on, Ron, your parents could pay for this. And I'd never heard her talk like that. She's the sweetest person.
Oh my gosh.
And these guys are like, come on, Ron, why don't you want to do it? Why don't you want to do it? And I'm like, I don't even know what this is. Like I wasn't, and I've heard from other Landmark people that that's not normal, that it's not a occurrence, But I was terrified. I was so disgusted and so angry. But it's in that height, I could see in that height of like emotions. And they went through the whole weekend and the sharing and the certification and all this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm going to get people in. People need to experience this high.
Yep. That is exactly it. And I have done that program. And I did the adjacent seminars for years. But this is actually a great illustration of I was a person who could stay on kind of the outside of that, enjoy some pieces of it, because they have a great Socratic method, which is asking questions. There's not a person at the front of the room going, this is how you should feel. This is what's going on, right? It's asking questions, which I think is amazing. There's the actual work of what they do there. And then there's how they do their recruitment, which are two different things. And the way they do their recruitment is very borderline, both because they ask you questions at the beginning to find out what your problems are. And if you sit down with someone like in a private session to help you figure out how you're going to pay for it, right? They'll say, I mean, there's stuff coming out of their mouths, or there was when I went through it, that I would now say, being the cult obsessed cult person I am, I would say are right out of the playbook. Like, Ron or Ellen, you seem like a person who really wants to change the world. You seem like a person who really wants to transform, major things. Like, I can tell you've got a lot of heart, like just this absolute line, and this is what's so scary is, on the one hand, that's an absolute line that I could say to anyone, Ron, I really feel like you've got this, like you're the person who's going to make it happen, right? But I could also really feel that way, right? And if I'm deep enough, and I think Landmark's an amazing example, because you will hear from many, many people that it is a cult. I don't think they have a charismatic leader. I don't think they try to control information. I don't think that it's based
they're
on
not trying to hurt. It doesn't seem like they're hurting people. Like, it doesn't.
No, but they've got recruitment methods that are right out of the old, again, 101 playbook, right? And they are absolutely, like, people have these highs, you go through that weekend. Anyway, because I have done things like Landmark and other things, this is why when I see stuff like that, I'm like, oh yeah, makes total sense to me. Like,
and this documentary has the blueprints. That's what you and I, we work with so many amazing consultants and coaches. And so again, I'm like watching this documentary and I'm like, I know so many people that genuinely heart-centered people that want to build community. And you see the framework here of how to do it effectively, and how to elicit, how to incite like a deep need, right? And that's what she does. That's what Guru Jagat does. She understands the market, she understands the people, and she knows how to play to their needs, right? So like, for you as someone who also helps with people with messaging, with standing out and all that, like, did you find that where you like, oh man, like, what is the balance? What is the healthy balance of like wanting to create community in the best way possible, and at the same token, not incorporating the scary stuff? Or, you know what I mean? Was there a balance for you?
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. Like, I'm not making Yogi Bhajan money. Like, I don't have the multi-millions, the Rolls Royces, the chips, the tea, all that stuff. But if I started to make Yogi Bhajan money, would I have to take a look at the ways that's happening? And am I starting to be driven more by that? I think it's pretty clear he was pretty driven by that. The other thing with Katie Griggs, Guru Jagat, is she does go through a period where she's, at least the people who are around her say she's, obsessed with jewelry. She's spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on the sort of company dime to buy, I think, mostly jewelry, and like, just 5-star meals everywhere, private jets, all this stuff. I think once your ability to spend lavish sums of money is now also mixed in with the spiritual development of other people, I think there's going to be a problem. And what I mean is it always a problem? No, probably not. But like, you really have to take a look there, because I think that's a big deal. I very much relate to Katie Griggs. Like, when I see her on stage, I'm like, yep, I get what's happening there. I could very much see myself doing that. I think once we've got the money issue in play, and then the other issue is, Are you starting to treat other people around you like shit when you're, I mean, for any reason, whether you're in a bad mood, good mood, whatever, right? I think you have to, if you're in this, I call this the spiritual success world. That is my definition. And what I mean is there is Gen Xers like me and millennials like you and Gen Zs, and I'm sure some Gen Alphas starting to come into this narrative, this world where it's about being a more spiritual, grounded, purposeful, transformed, authentic person. But it's also about getting that dollar bill, y'all. Like there's that is there too. And it's part of the narrative and it is in hundreds and thousands of books and teachers who are talking about your divine right to prosperity. I mean, it is all over the place. And then we start to drift into, on the edges, some prosperity gospel stuff and tithing and anyway, it's complicated. So money has to be a factor. And then secondly, are you controlling people around you with your behavior so that they have to behave a certain way to be in with you? And if they're not, they're going to be punished until they learn to behave. And so we go back, I think, are you familiar with the BITE model of cults?
Yeah.
So behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions. It's the controlling of those four things, right? So in that Guru Jagat world where she's got all that money, she's eating all that stuff, and she's running around with this team that's getting no sleep whatsoever. They're constantly churning out new Guru Jagat Kundalini content.
Yeah, it's the social media videographers,
All that stuff. And why? Why are they churning out that content? For money. Why, that's why they're doing it. And again, there's nothing wrong with doing work for money.
But Ellen, this is such a good distinction. And I didn't think about because I was I really when I after I finished watching it, I called you and I was like, oh my God, Ellen, I'm so excited to talk to you about this because this really feels like a slippery slope. And you just nailed it. You really nailed the differentiator here, which is that I know people that run 7-figure businesses, high 7-figure businesses, and their business is reliant on real estate or on garages or on service plumbing or whatever, right? It's technology, it's not people. Those of us in the people business, coaches, consultants, leaders of people, that the minute you tap into that, when you cross over into, oh, I can start living lavishly, I can start supporting myself very comfortably, I'm living an abundance lifestyle, my kids, let's say it's, my kids are going to the best schools and I'm driving the fancy cars on it. Once you get it, I need more people though. I need more people.
Yeah.
And that's a very different conversation than I need to buy more properties.
I completely agree. I need more people or I need people who are going deeper and deeper, paying more and more. Those are your only two models, right? And so it is something that if you are in the people business and you are looking for more clicks, likes, and follows, or you are looking for, hey, you liked my $5,000 package? Well, clearly you're not going to get anywhere in life until you do my $25,000 package. Oh, you completed my $25,000 package? I think you're one of the elite. I think you're one of the elite few in the world that should participate in our 6-figure program, because once you do, you are going to be, there with a Rosetta Stone holding the keys to the kingdom in your tiny little hands. I mean, there's a thing there that is so problematic because on the one hand, deeper study of any subject and deeper practice of any subject tends to make you better at that thing, right? I'm assuming as an actor and a performer that the more you get into it, the probably better you get, whatever natural talent you have, right? In the world of marketing and running a business, as you know, that's its own skill. And you might be really good at people, but running a business is something different. And so, there is a major issue when you are in a situation where it's really important that you get more people and that they all go deeper, or both, one or the other, or both.
And then you're tied to that, right? So you'll do anything. Once you're in that, you've already crossed the threshold. You're accustomed to a certain level of living and lifestyle, right? So you're going to do anything. And this,
yeah.
Sorry, you go.
I mean to interrupt you. Well, prospect loss theory, right? Which is the idea that we will fight much harder to not lose something we already have than to get something we've never had. So if I've now got private schools for my children or whatever else it was, luxury jewelry, now this seems normal to me. Okay. So I'm going to go harder to not lose that than a person who's never had those things to get that, right? And I think what you see in all three of these cases, or certainly they don't say that much about what Hari Jiwan does with his wealth and spare time, but certainly with Yogi Bhajan and Katie Griggs, Guru Jagat, who again is a white woman, did I emphasize this? Wearing a turban as a Sikh, talking about and teaching what she calls the ancient lineage, ancient wisdom.
And it's even worse because the modern Sikh woman calls it out. Sikh, the turbans are supposed to cover your hair, right? So that your third chakra, or the crown chakra is like contained, right?
Yeah.
Guru Jagat doesn't, she lets her hair out on top of she's making it her own. She's giving it flair, It's so
exactly.
It's very
but and then again, she's talking about the ancient lineage of this teaching. She uses that phrase over and over and over again. You see it. There is no ancient lineage because it's ancient lineages from the 60s and this gentleman who becomes Yogi Bhajan. So sorry, I got off the topic.
That's right. I want to throw this your way though. This is what I love. And you just nailed it, and it gives me so much perspective. This is what I love about talking with you and Mark, because you and Mark talk about this idea of not just 10xing, right? But you also talk about this idea of having people that are really followers, not on a mass scale. You're talking about actually quality people that could benefit. Yep. And to me, that's a distinction. That's a much more, not altruistic, but that's a much kinder, much more helpful philosophy and perspective, because you guys talk about people that actually could benefit from what you do. And again, I want to be clear, that's not this other thing. There's 100 people out there, or 1,000 people, let's say, that not 100,000 people. There's 1,000 people that could really benefit individually from a piece of what I'm talking about. I'm not going to cram it down their throat. And I think that's the differentiator with you and Mark.
I think it's also partly the generations of the internet. And I'll just say that. I think there was a time where the goal of everyone sort of was to go viral, and it was measured all in numbers. And I think that had I been running around the world a lot at that time, if I'd gotten in on that, would that have made me feel good? Probably. I think, just so people know, my background is I came up as an academic, by the way. So I'm not really, I don't really have the DNA, I don't think, for that type of mass attraction. But I think we're in a generation of the internet now where you're just seeing more and more highly specialized groups. And our goal for our clients and the people who might watch this is, hey, if you're a person who's interested in, running your own business or managing your own wealth or finding some autonomous way to do things, if you are a person who cares about influence and impact, if you're a person who maybe does care about a spiritual angle or an angle of purpose or passion, yada, 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 but you'd also, like to make that bag, you'd be willing to make some dollars. I think there's a whole world of us who are together sort of fighting our way through this. And we need to be sharp and really on the lookout for, when does influence, the age of influence, they call this, right? When does influence become something pernicious, something manipulative, versus when is influence inspirational? and not only transformative but transparent,
But see,
right?
this is this is the ethical question. This is my final question for you, and then I'm going to shut up. This is the final question. How do you know? I, I don't know if there's a unified ethical value system anymore, right? So how do you know when transformation is ethical at this point? If you are a leader of in that realm and you want to help people on a mass scale, right? Like at what point um, do you know? Like, or how do we say this? Like how do we know that that's kind and a good thing to put out there in the world after people like this obstruct it?
I think that's a great question. I don't know that I have the total answer, but I would say you can definitely look to the motives of the person who is influencing, for sure. I think there's a big difference between people who are actually delivering what they promise to deliver and people who've got a bit of a shell game going on, right? Like, oh, it's this. Oh, nope, it's this. And I don't know all the answers to this, but I do feel like there are a lot of people selling transformation that will always work. Like it will always be transformative and it will always be a good thing. And then I think there are people selling it with ideas and systems that might not work so well any longer, but they're probably not going to admit that. At least that happens in business transformation.
Oh my God. I see it on social media. I'm obsessed with vegan diets and I did a vegan diet for 6 months and I loved it, except for the fact that my stomach can't tolerate it. But you see it online, on YouTube, on Instagram. I follow these people and they have this conviction and this like, this is the only thing that will keep you from dying. It's like, I'm sorry, nothing can keep you from dying, but like plant-based.
No, yeah, we don't know about that thing yet.
Right, we don't know about that. But it's always like carnivore diet or plant, like they have this conviction, and to me, that's not deliverable because everybody's different and every body's different, right?
I think you made a great point, Ron. I think anybody who claims to be the only source of something or whose idea is the only source of something. I don't think I have many original ideas. I think I tap into ideas that, in my opinion, tend to work out to be true more than not. I've borrowed these ideas from other people who borrowed them from other people. You know, when people are like, that's a made up word, and then other people are like, all words are made up, right? I think there's you always want to be careful and wary. Be wary of people who have some version of the story. My way is the only way, or this way is the only way. Because if nothing else, they don't have much self-awareness. They may not be that sophisticated about the world at large, right? I mean, I'm sorry, but in the world of diets, there's a thing that happens when people in general eat less food than they used to eat. You know, there's a weird thing that happens there. And do people, and like, I think that's probably true because of the way the human body works, right? Like rather than my opinion about this diet or that diet, I think be careful of people who don't seem to know that.
That's it. I mean, you nailed it. Because that's when I think about the coaches in our community that I respect the hell out of, or consultants or the service providers, they're not one-stop shop. They're not one size fits all. They're not right. They're actively like they're aggregates. They're taking a wealth of knowledge and perspectives and ideas and doing everything in their genuine powers and care to help you transform or help you get closer to what you want. And I think you're a great example of that. You and Mark, like you all, like you're not prescribing to one philosophy. You're so multifaceted and trained in so, and that's why you get the results that you do. So I just want to say, like, not sound like a sycophant, but I'm like, that you nailed it. That's the difference. If you can see it in a leader who has self-awareness and doesn't protest to be a leader, just is, like they just are because they want to share what they got, but they're also curious and passionate about helping you specifically find what it is that you're capable of doing, what it is that's going to make you the most fulfilled, successful, whatever it is. That's interesting. Whereas in this documentary, you see, 4 episodes of this is the way to do it. This is the packaging. If you don't do this, you're a loser. You don't want you. If you're not going to pay me, you're not going to get the results you want. Things like that.
You aren't going to be transformed. You won't live forever. You're not going to have a super bendy body. You're not going to be in this yoga community of celebrities that other cool people like. I think it's absolutely fascinating to also notice, is there an in-group and an out-group being created? Because that is not something you see all the time. But with high control groups, you see it every time. And by out-group, let's pretend I'm doing this. So Ron, oh, you're no longer paying me to be a client. Well, you are not part of the super tight community. You are not part of the bitch slap of truth community. When you decide to come back to the light, we can talk. But let me tell you about Ron and about other people who left our community and the terrible things that happened to them and why it was very, very bad, versus those who have seen the light and come deeper and deeper into the benevolent world of Ellen, bitch slap of truth, Mark, super tight, yada, yada, yada. So you will see that in all these documentaries, there is that being created. But this is why, Ron, and I thank you so much for your questions. This is why this shit is fascinating, because all of us are looking for a way to be cooler, better, thinner, younger, richer, more authentic, have more friends, have better sex, have a better boyfriend or girlfriend, have a better car, house, vacations, the influencer life, running around the world. I think that's still very, very, very much the fantasy. And so what will we give to someone who promises us, oh, I've got the path to that? I think that's constantly a question that we're probably going to keep dealing with. So definitely check out that documentary, Breath of Fire. I think it's on IMDb. I watched it through Max. I have a Max thing. Max, that's how I watched it. But it just came out a few weeks ago, and it is a fascinating study of the ecology of one little bit of the spiritual success world and some of the whack stuff that goes on. So seriously, check it out. It is
whack. It is whack. But thank you so much, Ellen, for putting in perspective. And I don't know, I feel really good about this idea of what you're saying at the core of how to trust someone is that if they're not offering everything under the sun is the only way to do it. So this was a great talk. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Rod.